Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. Last week, Dana White announced UFC 291 Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje, and this card is crazy stacked from top to bottom. And I believe because it is so stacked and UFC 291 is just such an incredible card, I believe there's quite a few negatives that are being vastly overlooked by the MMA community. One being the BMF title in the main event, which is corny, cringy, WWE-esque. I already did a video talking about that. I'll link that down in the description if you guys want to go check it out. But the second being the co-main event, which is Alex Pereira versus Jan Blachowicz. And I know people are going to say, like, how can you complain about that fight? That's a great fight on paper. Yeah, that's a great fight on paper. But when you really start to add context to it, I absolutely hate this fight. I think it's a mistake by the UFC. I think it's a mistake by Alex Pereira. I think it's a mistake by Alex Pereira's management. And I do believe that UFC 291 may be the end of Alex Pereira's UFC career. And I think I know what the UFC is trying to do here, and we'll talk about that later in the video. But I just think this is a huge mistake. You look at Alex Pereira, former middleweight champion, and what a story he has to come from nothing, be a successful kickboxer, follow Israel Adesanya over to the UFC, and he gets fast-tracked to the title. 3 wins before he gets a title shot. One of those wins were ranked. Only one. And he fights Israel Adesanya at UFC 281. He's losing the majority of the fight. In the 5th round, he comes back. He TKOs Israel Adesanya to win the middleweight title. Incredible story. They run the immediate rematch at UFC 287. He gets over aggressive. Israel Adesanya is a dangerous counter striker, and he gets clipped with a right hand, brutally slept. Then a nasty follow-up hammer fist as Alex Pereira is completely out cold. And then Israel Adesanya, just to top it all off, shoots 3 arrows into him as well. And as soon as this fight ended, as soon as the knockout happened, I said, yeah, they're not running that trilogy. I don't think they're going to do that trilogy, at least not anytime soon. And sure enough, you know, after the fight, the UFC was kind of saying Alex Pereira probably go up to light heavyweight. And then Alex Pereira said, yeah, I'm going up to light heavyweight. And it had been talked about for a while. The weight cut was significant for Alex Pereira. There was talks, oh, Alex Pereira could fight at heavyweight because that's how big he was. And he's cutting down to middleweight. And I thought, oh, Alex Pereira, take some time off, move up to light heavyweight. I think that's a great idea. And then sure enough, we get this announcement that we're getting Alex Pereira versus Jan Blachowicz at UFC 291. UFC 291 is July 29th, okay? UFC 287, where Alex Pereira got brutally slept by Israel Adesanya, was April 8th. We're looking at 112 days in between Alex Pereira getting brutally slept and Alex Pereira fighting Jan Blachowicz in the light heavyweight division. And I really thought, okay, Johnny Walker's fighting Anthony Smith soon. If Johnny Walker wins, book him up with Alex Pereira because then Johnny Walker's ranked in the top 5. Johnny Walker's going to need some time off himself, so he's probably not going to fight till the end of 2023. Oh my God, that makes perfect sense. Alex Pereira versus Johnny Walker. And Johnny Walker, sure enough, beat Anthony Smith. Made perfect sense. Alex Pereira, keep him out to the end of the year, and he can fight Johnny Walker, who his chin isn't particularly known for being great. And it was still a fun matchup. And instead, we get UFC 291, Jan Blachowicz. And I really just hate it. When you add that context to it, where he's coming off a brutal KO, he's coming back roughly a little under 4 months after getting brutally slept, and he's fighting Jan Blachowicz, who's known for the legendary Polish power. And I know there's going to be people that are going to cherry pick Jan Blachowicz's resume and say he lost to this guy and lost to that guy, and he got stopped by Thiago Santos. Jan Blachowicz had a career resurgence over the past few years, became light heavyweight champion, looked incredible, has reinvented himself, is a completely different fighter than he was back in 2017, 2018. Completely different fighter than he is today. He's an elite level striker. Oh, and he's got grappling in his back pocket. This is just a terrible decision by the UFC. This is terrible matchmaking by the UFC because you have Jan Blachowicz, who's 40 years old, but he's still very, very good. He's coming off a title fight where it was a draw. UFC 282, December of last year, he fought Magomed Ankalaev to a draw for the light heavyweight title. But the UFC and Dana White were so adamant, we need to get a title holder for light heavyweight. We'll do Jamal Hill versus Glover Teixeira. The main event of UFC 283, Jamal Hill wins the title. But Jan Blachowicz's last fight was a draw for the light heavyweight title. And you look at Alex Pereira's previous fights. Andreas Michailidis, his UFC debut. First round, he gets out-grappled in. Second round, he gets the flying knee KO, but he got out-grappled in the first round. When he fought Israel Adesanya for the first time in MMA, that third round, once he got taken down, he had nothing to offer. Israel Adesanya was just controlling him on the ground, beating him up, wrist control. Alex Pereira had nothing to offer. Well, guess what? And I know MMA math doesn't always work. Jan Blachowicz out-grappled Israel Adesanya, took him down, controlled him, beat him up. So now he's going to go up against a guy who's the same size as him, if not bigger. And Jan Blachowicz is going to have better grappling than a guy that was just out-grappling you. So even if you want to say Alex Pereira is an elite-level kickboxer, and let's say he's able to outstrike Jan Blachowicz, guess what Jan Blachowicz is going to do? He's going to take him to the ground, he's going to beat him up, and probably KO him. And it wouldn't surprise me if Jan Blachowicz KOs him on the feet. One of the biggest weapons in Alex Pereira's arsenal is his leg kicks. Guess who is probably the best leg kicker, at least in the light heavyweight division? Jan Blachowicz. Amazing leg kicks himself for offense and amazing ability to check leg kicks as well. So I don't know that Alex Pereira is going to be able to exploit the legs of Jan Blachowicz in the capacity he's been able to do like Israel Adesanya and other fighters in the past. It's just not going to happen that way. And even if he's able to win on the feet, Jan Blachowicz is going to take him down. And then on top of that, Alex Pereira had the benefit of a massive size advantage at middleweight. He was a massive middleweight. He dwarfed Israel Adesanya. And I'm not one of these people complaining Alex Pereira is a weight bully. I don't care. If you can make the weight, you can make the weight. I'm not going to cry about it. But now he's going up. He's fighting Jan Blachowicz, who's probably the same size as him. And Jan Blachowicz is very durable. You know, he's looked incredible. He just came off a draw where when they were standing, I think it was the second and third round, Jan Blachowicz was dominating Magomed Ankalaev with leg kicks and outstriking him. And I just don't think this is a favorable matchup by any means for Alex Pereira. And Jan Blachowicz, of course, can mix in that grappling. And then you add to the fact he just got slept 112 days ago. It's 112 days between UFC 287 and UFC 291. I don't know who's managing Alex Pereira. Is it the same manager as Edmund Shabazian? Because I think this is career suicide. To fight a guy who's literally known for his legendary Polish power, who's also well-rounded, and to fight him 4 months, under 4 months, since you got brutally slept, and maybe going up in weight, maybe his chin's completely refreshed. I just don't think it's worth taking that chance. Because Alex Pereira's not young himself. He's not young himself. And if he gets brutally KO'd by Jan Blachowicz, which is very possible, there's no coming back from that. He gets brutally slept twice in a row, and now he gets slept by a 40-year-old Jan Blachowicz. He's not coming back from that. And I know there's people that are going to say, well, Alex Pereira trains with Glover Teixeira, and Glover Teixeira ragdolled Jan Blachowicz and finished him. That's not how MMA training works. You know, I'm so sick and tired of that argument where if you train with a fighter, that automatically you absorb their skills. You know, it just doesn't make sense. If I go train with John Jones for 2 months, that doesn't make me John Jones, okay? It doesn't. Now, Alex Pereira, I'm sure he's been working on it. There's no doubt about that. But it was such a low level when he entered the UFC, I don't think he can make up ground. I think Jan Blachowicz, being the same size as him, he has the grappling advantage. It's not like Jan is a terrible striker. I just don't see a way, unless Pereira catches him early, or unless Pereira is really light on his feet, moving well, and Jan slowed down, and you know, the fight against Magomed Ankalaev, where I think it was the 4th or 5th round where he got 10-8'd on the ground. Maybe the age and the damage has caught up to Jan Blachowicz, and maybe Pereira wins. I just don't like this idea, especially not right now when you could have booked him against Johnny Walker in October or November. It just makes no sense to me. I feel like UFC 291 may very well be the end of Alex Pereira's UFC career, because if he gets finished there, it's done. It's done. It's over. He's not making a title run. It's just not happening. What's he going to go back down the middleweight? Not going to happen. And I really do believe the UFC is just trying to fast track Alex Pereira into title contention. And I also do believe, and I made a whole entire video on this as well, I'll link it down in the description. I do believe the main event of UFC 293 in September, I have a sneaking suspicion it's going to be Israel Adesanya versus Jamal Hill for the light heavyweight title. So is the UFC kind of thinking, well, damn, if we get Alex Pereira, he gets a win over Jan Blachowicz. Who knows what's going on with Yuri Prochazka in his shoulder? You know, supposedly it was a traumatic shoulder injury. Maybe he returns the end of the year. Maybe he doesn't. But getting Alex Pereira into that mix at light heavyweight, and then potentially in the future, Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira 3 for the light heavyweight title. And even if my theory is wrong, and let's say they don't book Israel Adesanya versus Jamal Hill, okay, and they book something else, maybe they wait for Yuri Prochazka to return. Well, guess what? They're thinking, oh, if we get Alex Pereira, if he gets a win over Jan Blachowicz, then he gets to fight Jamal Hill. They'll probably give him a title shot. Jan Blachowicz already came out and said, the UFC told me I will get a title shot with a win over Alex Pereira. So I can only assume former middleweight champion Alex Pereira would get the same courtesy. So if he beats Jan Blachowicz, he gets a title fight. I actually like his chances better against Yuri Prochazka and Jamal Hill than I do against Jan Blachowicz. And then if he wins that fight, oh, Israel Adesanya is definitely going up. Against a guy he's beat, a guy he KO'd, I think Adesanya would definitely move up and attempt to take that light heavyweight title from Alex Pereira. And I think the UFC is kind of thinking ahead of the game, and they're like, oh, let's set this up. Not that they're really planning on that because they know anything can happen in MMA, but I just think they're like, okay, we can get Alex Pereira in title contention. He beats Jan Blachowicz. He gets a title shot. And, you know, him versus Yuri Prochazka is fun. Him versus Jamal Hill is fun. But if we can get that third fight against Israel Adesanya for the light heavyweight title, it would be incredible. But I just think it's going to backfire. I think this is going to backfire terribly for Alex Pereira, terribly for Alex Pereira's fans. I just hate the matchup. I just think you have a guy in Jan Blachowicz who's 40 years old, and he has crazy good power. He has really good striking. He has decent grappling. And now Alex Pereira is losing the size advantage. I just do believe Alex Pereira is going to lose this fight. I want him to win, honestly. I'm rooting for Alex Pereira here. But I just think the UFC forcing him to turn around so quickly, maybe they're planning on they don't ever want Alex Pereira to go after Israel Adesanya again. They're like, oh, we're going to get him KO'd by Jan Blachowicz. If they're going to make this fight, why not push it back? Why not have it in at least August or September? 3 months, 3.5 months since he got slept by Israel Adesanya, you're going to book that fight again? When there's other options, there's so many other options they could have booked for Alex Pereira. I just don't know why they did this. It's a horrible idea. And what even sucks even more is Jan Blachowicz isn't going to be around for much longer. Best case scenario, he fights maybe 1-2 more years. He's not going to be a guy that's fighting until he's 45. It's just not going to happen. So Jan Blachowicz essentially ruins Alex Pereira's career on his way out. Talk about rubbing salt in the wound. And I hope I'm wrong on this. Maybe I'll change my mind as the weeks and months go on, but to return that quickly, it never ends well. I don't have every example of it, but every time a fighter gets KO'd and tries to jump right back in the cage 3 months later, 4 months later, it never ends well. Usually they end up getting KO'd again. And I just think this matchup stylistically, no matter which way you cut it, I think he loses because Jan Blachowicz has that grappling in his back pocket. He would out-grapple Alex Pereira, and you cannot convince me otherwise. So I hope to see Alex Pereira in a light heavyweight title picture in the near future, but I just don't think it's going to happen. He's coming back too soon. Maybe if the fight was booked for November, maybe I would think differently, but I just don't believe this fight is going to be good for Alex Pereira's career. And if he gets KO'd by Jan Blachowicz, he gets brutally slept, I think he's going to have to retire. I think he's going to leave the UFC, maybe go back to kickboxing or something along those lines. Because then what? You're just going to feed his dead corpse? You're going to pass him around the top 10? Is that what you're going to do? Because I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that for Alex Pereira. He's one of my favorite fighters, honestly. I love watching Alex Pereira fight. And I just don't know why the UFC didn't wait, book him against Johnny Walker. If he were to beat Anthony Smith, which he did end up doing, makes perfect sense in my mind. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Do you think I'm crazy? Do you think Alex Pereira is definitely going to beat Jan Blachowicz? I just think this is horrible decision making by the UFC matchmakers. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe. And thank you so much for watching.